Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am super excited because I am going to be reviewing probably the most highly requested book I have been told by you guys to read, which is one that was not even on my radar remotely until it started just popping up in the comments everywhere. Finally read it, and I definitely have some pretty strong feelings about it. So today we're going to be talking about Aristotle and Dante Discover the Universe. If you are like me and you didn't know about this book and don't know what it's about, it stars two characters, Aristotle and Dante. Aristotle is going through some pretty tough shit. His brother has been in jail for a really long time, and his family basically pretends he doesn't exist. His father was in the war, and since he came back, which is, Aristotle never knew him before he came back because he was still a baby. Ever since he came back, it's just been really hard for Aristotle to connect and just kind of talk to him. He has a really hard time building a relationship with his father because he's so traumatized by the war, and of course his other son who's now in jail. And then of course his mother, he still feels like while he has a decent relationship with her, there's aspects of her that he just doesn't really know because they all pretend like his brother doesn't exist. And then he has two older sisters who are so much older than him, he feels completely disconnected and just in general feels very lonely in his family. Then Dante comes in, who is someone he meets that summer, and they develop a friendship, and it basically follows the coming-of-age story of both of these people as Aristotle tries to deal with all of these conflicts, both within himself and within his family and the relationships there, while Dante is trying to figure out his sexuality and kind of have the same issues. While his family life is a lot better than Aristotle's, he still has the same kind of issues with the relationships and friendships and that kind of stuff. Non-spoiler wise, this is going to be very hard, so I'm going to try to give the best non-spoiler review I can. I don't think it's going to be my best, but hopefully it will help you guys kind of sway onto whether you want to pick it up or not. I genuinely really enjoyed this book. This is easily one of the top 5 best books I've read in the year so far. It was honestly incredible. If you liked Tin Man, if you liked Call Me By Your Name, you will adore this book. I think one of the things that I loved about this book so much was the writing was beautiful. It had a poetic air to it, but not in a contrived, overly poetic way, which is something I personally don't really like. And it turns out the author is actually a poet, so it makes sense. The flow of the writing and just everything about it, I never wanted to put this book down. It took me like a day to read, and I just could not put it down. You really can identify with both characters. Obviously not necessarily to the extremes of their lives, but in little things, you can kind of see yourself. And I really enjoyed that about it. And I just love the way, I said this like 7 times, I just love the way that the story was told. Both characters and the families were very realistic in the sense of they were all flawed and they all had their issues, but at the end of the day, they were all just so, I don't even know how to explain it. It's definitely a tearjerker of a book. I was on a beach reading this, and I just at the end was sobbing because it's so beautiful, the ending, it really is, and I just cannot recommend it more. I don't think I can talk about it more outside of that without giving spoilers, which I know is really shitty because I haven't really been able to say anything about it, but I hope that sways you enough to read it because I really did enjoy it. If you're apprehensive, check out the library. I mean, you can basically read the book risk-free if you like it or not. It's a free book. So yeah, without really being able to say much more else on that is going to be the end of the non-spoiler portion, and I'm going to move on to the spoiler portion of the video. Once again, I'm really sorry that was so short. I just don't know how else to talk about it without giving major spoilers in the book. So yeah, let's move on to the non-spoiler part. So all in all, I will say I loved every single part of this book. No joke. There's not a single piece of this book that I did not like. I don't care if I have rose-tinted glasses on. I am obsessed with this book. It is so beautiful, so raw and real, and the characters. I just love this book so much. I think the main thing that I loved so much about this book was that while this was a book about discovering your sexuality, that was not the main focal point of the book. And I think that's important because when it comes to books and even in movies, the way that they'll portray finding yourself in terms of your sexuality is that's the only road that you're going down. You're only dealing with that. That's the only stress you have. When in reality, for a lot of people, not only are they trying to figure out their sexuality, but there's so many other variables and so many other stresses and so many other problems in their lives that they have to balance with something as hard as trying to figure out who you are. And I think that the sides of Aristotle, who had so much going on that it actually had him indirectly suppress his own sexuality to deal with other problems in his family, such as his relationship with his father, his relationships with other people in general, and his relationship with his mother and brother, distracted him from trying to figure out himself. And I think that was shown obviously through his outbursts and his anger. And then you have Dante, who was able to come to that conclusion in terms of his sexuality a lot quicker because he had a decent family life. And while he didn't feel 100% comfortable and was quite afraid to tell his family about it, he didn't have a ton of conflict in his life that ended up having him indirectly suppress it, which I think was a really great job by the writer to show the two different stories, because you're basically following two completely different people kind of get to the same goal of finding themselves. Going off on that point even more, I just really loved how the book really showed how wounded Aristotle was. There was just a lot more things that he needed to come to terms with and mend before he could even begin to discover his sexuality. He had to mend his relationship with his father, his brother, his friends, even those two girls that he was friends with that he kept kind of brushing off, saying, oh, they're not my friends and all this stuff. And throughout the book, you could slowly see that it took him a while, but you can see him going through the paces of finally becoming more confident in his relationships with people and being vulnerable with people. And the care that this writer took with Aristotle and taking him from this really wounded and angry boy and turning him into what he came out, I just loved the way that he had paced his storyline, I guess you could say. I also like how you could see that internal struggle throughout the book Aristotle had, that Aristotle didn't even realize that was what he was kind of reacting in the ways that he would have outbursts and he would be mad at Dante because Dante would send him letters of how open he was and how not necessarily confident he was with his sexuality, because he obviously was still hiding it, but the confidence within himself that he was sure of what he was. And Aristotle would always, I think he said something like, I never hated Dante more in this moment or something. And you could see that he was mad at Dante, but he couldn't figure out why. And he literally says that. He's like, I don't even know why I'm mad at Dante. He was completely oblivious to what was actually happening in his head because there was just so much going on in his life. I also like that Dante wasn't portrayed as this picture-perfect character either. I think that this book quickly could have become one of those books where you have Aristotle, who's suffering a lot, and then you have Dante, who's kind of a male version of a manic pixie dream girl, but that wasn't how it went, which I really, really appreciated. And I think that if it had gone that route, it would have been a lot more, I don't even know. I'm just really glad he didn't do that because that would have just sucked. I think that the book is a lot more raw and real if you have both characters equally going through struggles with themselves and with their families and friends and all that kind of stuff. As I mentioned before, I think the writing was great. The rhythm made it very easy to binge read this. It was constantly, there was just never a dull moment of the book. Even though it's not necessarily an action-packed book, you're pretty much just reading about two people living and going through their lives. And it was just so interesting, and I think it's because it was so raw and real, and there were so many more elements to it than just about sexuality. The family was completely included in the story, and you get a complete view, I guess, of somebody who might be going through something like that, at least fictionally. You get that view, which I really appreciated, because often with those kind of books, I often wonder, just in my head, not even in a critical way, but just in a curiosity, what's the mom thinking, what's the dad thinking, and I really enjoyed that about it. Also, the ending was so adorable and sad and also happy. I literally bawled so hard to this, honestly, when it was Aristotle's parents who were the ones that told him that they thought that he was gay before Aristotle could even himself. Oh my God, that to me was just, my heart broke, but was also so full at the exact same time, because it just showed how broken Aristotle was in terms of broken and distracted, I guess, by the amount of conflict in his life that he couldn't even fully identify it in himself. But his parents, who love him so much and know exactly who he is, were able to tell him, and then he's able to be with Dante. And it was just so cute. I really do actually like the fact that it was the parents that came to him and said, we think this is what's going on, because it shows that it's more than just about Aristotle and Dante. It's about all of the people that were included in the journey and the relationships that they were both mending along the way. And I just thought it was a really beautiful way to end the story, that it was Aristotle's parents that were able to tell him, I guess. Anyways, guys, if you've read this book, let me know your thoughts. I'm sure that I'm going to be getting a lot of comments on what you guys thought and the things that you liked about the book, maybe the things that you didn't if you didn't like anything. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe. If you enjoy my content and want to follow me outside of YouTube, you can. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Goodreads, which are all Casey Aonso. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.